Welcome, everybody. This is Mark Miller and my sidekick,
Elizabeth Rebay in Austin, Texas.
We're both in Austin, and this is Career Pivot, my office hours. And today we're going to talk about what I call the introverted sales guy job search. This is based on a client of mine who I helped last year, who exactly what I said. He was an introverted sales guy. And you'd be surprised how many of them are out there. And his job search was very interesting. It took less than a year. He was unemployed when we got started, and pretty cool. He's happily employed now. But I think a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening, a lot of what I did with him or what he did will apply to most of you. So I think we're going to do Q&A. Elizabeth's going to ask me some questions. And by the way, we are recording this, and we should record for about half an hour.
Yes. Mark wrote an interesting blog post about his introverted sales guy. And one of the things that Mark and I think his name was Steve worked on together.
Him, not his real name, but I'm calling him Steve.
Okay, calling him Steve. So one of the things that Mark worked on with him was developing his weak ties. So I was going to ask Mark. I said, go a little bit more about your weak ties and how what is that and how is that important and what can you do to maximize them?
Well, it's interesting. I first learned about weak ties when I read Adam Grant's book, Give and Take. And actually, the concept of weak ties comes from actually a Stanford research paper back in the 1970s. And the reality is, what Adam Grant talked about was the fact that he had any number of folks who did a lot of networking. And he found that a weak tie is someone who you have known in the past but don't currently interact with them. And the value of weak ties is the fact that they run in different circles than you. A strong tie, someone whom you know very well, they know the same people you do. The other advantage of weak ties is you already know them. And for the introvert, it is much more comfortable reaching out to them. You know who they are. And in Steve's case, Steve was a relationship-based account manager. He was very good at building relationships. So, by the way, Steve was a really nice guy. And what he discovered as he started reaching out to people was they remembered him. And they remembered him as a really nice guy.
Well, that's good. It's good to be nice.
Right? And so one of the first things I had him do was do the research over the last 25 years. Where had all these people he had worked with over the last 25 years, where had they gone? And start reaching out and connecting with them on LinkedIn.
So he had all these people on his contacts list, or
well, he knew their names.
Okay.
He knew he had worked with them in the past. He got on LinkedIn Advanced Search and started searching on their names.
Okay.
Right, and he knew he had worked with certain people at certain times at certain companies, so he could search on those companies. And lo and behold, these people popped up, and he started sending out connection requests. And lo and behold, people remembered him. And so my whole concept is for him to go ask for AIR, which is advice, insights, and recommendations. And so he very, very methodically, every week, 5 to 10 a week, reached out, ended up connecting with them on LinkedIn, scheduling a phone call. And by the way, for someone who's very introverted, this is something they can do. It's all one-on-one. It's all very strategic. And it's with people who we already had a relationship maybe 15, 20 years ago. But the other key piece was, where were they working?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the most valuable things you can do is go back and look at all these people you've worked with, where you may have worked with them at the same company, or you may have interacted with them as a partner. Well, they've moved on too. Where have they gone?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So it's just a maze of people.
Right. It's a way of. The first thing I wrote 3 blog posts on finding companies, and one of them is following those weak ties as to where have your weak ties gone, because you had something in common with them. And so if they went to company XYZ, well, maybe company XYZ might be a good place. So that's your weak ties are incredibly valuable. By the way, if you are a valuable weak tie, if you are a parent, is your children's friends' parents. They probably run in completely different circles than you do. And they know people that you don't. So this concept of weak ties is incredibly valuable. And if you will consistently reach out to them, and in his case, in Steve's case, the more he reached out, the easier it got. It was very difficult in the beginning because he figured no one was going to remember him. They weren't going to help. The other piece was the fact that he was amazed how many people who had experienced unemployment over the last 15 years. And were they willing to help? Well, hell yes.
Yes. Yep.
This is not like the 1970s where if you didn't have a job, there was something wrong with you. These are very, very different times. And he was amazed how quickly everyone would reach out to him, or was willing to spend some time with him and suggestions, introduce him to people. And the like. So your weak ties, will you turn them into strong ties? Maybe. But the fact is, well, I'll use the example. When I went off to teach high school math, my most valuable networking connection was my chiropractor. She knew lots of people. Right?
Yeah.
Completely.
They do.
Her network was completely disconnected from mine.
Yes.
So that's the concept. And again, weak ties are incredibly valuable, and do not overlook them.
Okay. So, and also it sounds like just to definitely look for people outside your network and check into their network to see if there's any connections too,
yes.
In addition to what you have right in front of you.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if for those of us who are a little older, we've worked with a lot of people over the years.
Yes.
And again, those people, one of the differences is that you know them. So Pamela asks, what if you switch career and your weak ties are continuing your previous career? How do those connections help? You never know who they may know. Again, the longer you have been disconnected from them, you will be surprised who they may know.
Okay.
So
we're good. So he went out and he developed his weak ties, and
right.
then so how did he use those to go find in his job search, or what did he do next after he went out and developed?
Well, number one, we went out and appropriately branded him.
Okay.
We took his LinkedIn profile, and again, we built as if you'll read the post, which, by the way, I'm going to paste it in the. That's the post. We branded him. He was a technical. He dealt with very complex manufacturing equipment. And so one of the key pieces was we put in his LinkedIn profile links to all the complex equipment he had sold over the years. So you could tell that he dealt with a lot of very interesting stuff. We told the story in his summary section. We built out his LinkedIn profile. And then the other thing we started doing was I had him start going through the LinkedIn company pages, starting with the company he used to work for. So if you go to a LinkedIn company page, in the bottom right-hand corner, you will see something called people who looked at this page also looked at these companies.
Yep.
On the mobile app, they call it similar companies.
Okay.
If you get past the really big guys like IBM and General Motors, you'll typically find that this will be either direct competitors or companies that are in adjacent industries. And that's where the interesting one comes in. You'll start following your breadcrumbs. So he would look at one company, the company he would say, give him 4 or 5 companies, he would go look at them, and then follow their LinkedIn companies, well, who also looked at them. By the way, where he ended up getting hired was at a company that made components to the machines he used to sell.
Oh, perfect.
Right? But you'd be surprised how often you will find companies that are in adjacent industries, closely related, that you had no idea they existed.
Okay.
2, it also gives you the opportunity to start looking at, you never know. In his case, he was an account manager. He literally could work anywhere.
Sure.
One of the things to look at LinkedIn company pages is to start looking at, I use the example, I'll look for a certain job title in LinkedIn Advanced Search, and I'll look for people in Austin. And then I'm looking at, well, where do they work? And what you'll very often find is people who work for companies are not located here. And you say, they're not located here. And either, number one, they let their people work remote. Sure. So I had one case where I had a client who was approached by a company out of San Francisco. We went into their LinkedIn company page, did see all their employees, and then plugged in Austin. And what did we find? We found they had 5 employees in Austin out of 700.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, they let people work remote. I had another case where we found somebody, and they had an office with 50 people off the Loop 360. You never know they were there.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So very often the people who are capable of hiring you in your city, you don't know exist, are there.
Okay.
In fact, I've got a client in North Carolina doing this right now, using certain keywords and searching. And he's finding all kinds of interesting companies. They had no idea they were there. And some of them were small and just he wasn't aware of them. And so I claim it's you as a person, you solve certain problems. Well, who has the problems that you solve? And so the one way is to use LinkedIn company pages. In his case, what happened was he actually found a company that one of his weak ties was working at. And it was a 4 or 5 month process, but it's this methodical going after it. And as it turned out, that person ended up referring him in, and basically that's how he got his job.
Wow, that's great.
And it was for a company he'd never heard of before.
Okay.
Right, and it's and again, I always, I told him right up front, your next job is going to come from a relationship. And by the way, you have no control over the timing. It's going to just miraculously happen.
So you got to be ready.
Right, and that's what happened. Jim types in, "This is the first time I've joined. I can hear anything. Can't see anything other than the main blab page of the square." Okay, I've turned off my file exit. Okay, we'll have to. I'll chat with you later, Jim. Trying to figure out what the heck's going on.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes. So the point here is, it was through the methodically reaching out. Oh, he says that should say I can't hear anything, can't see anything. Okay. But nonetheless, it was something that as someone who is highly introverted could do.
Yeah, and I like it because it sounds like it was very methodical, and it was based on data, and
Yep.
it was something that he could manage or control. It wasn't like him being thrown out into a situation and expected to pitch himself as being an introvert to do that. So
Yeah.
it sounds like it was a great process.
Well, through the branding process, we came up with, and through my evaluation process, we came up with all the questions he should be asking.
Okay.
Right? So he came up with a set of 10 or 12 questions that he can use, and he knew that certain things he needed a certain level of freedom. He knew he didn't really want a heavy-handed boss. He wanted more of a colleague. He wanted he wanted to be able to interact with the engineers who were involved in the product. He was at his best when the customer had a unique problem before they buy it, and then him solving it. That's when he was his biggest value proposition, and that's the idea was he learned saying, okay, that's my real value.
Okay.
Let me find the right product for me to go sell.
Yeah.
And
all those things you were talking about a few minutes ago, those are all things that you should get settled in your mind before you even start walking, out the door to do interviews and
yes.
and to know what type of boss you want, the environment, the work environment, things like that. So that I think also helps you when you start reaching out to the weak ties, because most likely they will be asking you, what are you looking for? And if you can have some of those questions already answered in your mind, that'll help them direct you to a better situation.
Well, it's as much as what you want to do as to properly describe yourself. Because sometimes I've got one client who's just miserable in what he does, and he's not sure what he wants to do. And the key piece here is, we've kind of talked it out. He's kind of an operations guy. He knows how to get stuff done. He knows how to organize stuff. What kind of job does that apply in? He's not sure. But he can the idea is to get him to self-describe himself.
Yes.
So that once you can self-describe yourself, people can help you.
Yes.
But I can't tell you the number of networking events I've been to where you say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I don't really know. And then you start asking questions and start pulling it out of them. And some of it's just, who are you?
Yes.
And for you to be able to do that, and more importantly, was when he would ask open-ended questions of knowing what to listen for.
And he's good at that, being an introvert.
Being an introvert, correct. In fact, my buddy Tom Singer talks about the fact that introverts are actually better networkers.
Yeah, because they listen.
They listen
to the pain points and what makes you tick. So
right, and so between the weak ties, the company pages, it was interesting watching. We met weekly on Skype, and it was interesting watching his confidence grow as people came back to him and were going, yeah, I'm willing to help.
Good.
Okay.
Good. I guarantee you, if he gets a phone call from somebody, he will be happy to help them.
Right.
If they wander along. So, well, good. So besides LinkedIn, that sounded like that was a big tool to use. Is there any other social media that you would suggest or recommend to cultivate relationships in your career?
Well, it's anything. It's understanding where your audience, where your folks sit. For some of you, will be on Facebook. As I said, I cannot overemphasize the value of people who know a lot of people but don't necessarily work in your industry. My chiropractor is a good classic example. There are people in, reaching out on Facebook. I said I use Facebook strictly for social, and I really don't. I got on Facebook because my son was on Facebook, and I have slowly figured out Twitter, and I'll be doing some blog posts and some videos and I've got a couple out there on how to use Twitter to harvest things, and finding out where things are, because Twitter is just a giant database. You can search it.
It
is. I've did a blog post on Twitter lists on how to build a specifically targeted number of people that you just want to use. So, for example, we've got a Boomer Job Tips list, which has I think it has six different IDs on it, and it's like Next Avenue and Harvard Business Review and Forbes and Career Sherpa and a few others. And the idea is I only see the tweets from just those people when I go view the list. So it's really quite valuable. And so understanding how to use Twitter, and in fact using Twitter more as a chat than as a broadcast medium.
Yes.
I can get people's attention by just sending them a tweet. Why? Because it's going to show up on their phone.
Yes.
Right. Yep. And I don't know their telephone number, but I sure can tweet them. I can send a tweet directly to them. And and this has happened multiple times where I've had occasions where my National Speakers Association, the one day we were having an event and it said it was at Patty DiNucci's house. And I'm going, where's Patty DiNucci's house? So I tweeted two people and I immediately got a response and got the address.
Oh, good.
So it's getting comfortable. By the way, our next discussion next Monday will be on social media, because our post on Wednesday will be on social media is going corporate. Are you going with it? Are you ready? Because social media, if you're not comfortable with it, you better know how to use it. And Tom Markham says, as Gary Vee said the other day, what person do you know that doesn't have their phone within arm reach at all times? Yeah, although it's rather interesting, Tom Markham, we did a blog post here and did a survey on smartphone usage, and only half of those people over 50 have a smartphone. And that was based on a Pew Research study. Well, Tom says I'm 55 and I have two. Well, you know what, Tom, that means is you're special.
You're special.
Yeah, Tom Grant asked, can we find your posts on Twitter? Yeah, just search on Career Pivot. I tweet out my posts pretty regularly. So so yes, Tom says he looks at them all the time. So yes. So
that's good.
So we are at 20 minutes past the hour. Do you have any more questions for me? Or should we open this up for the audience?
Let's open it up and see what
okay,
people
so
have to say.
We are recording, so I'm going to open up the seat, and if anybody wants to hop in, please do, and grab the seat, and let's talk.
It's your chance to shine.
Yeah. I think last week we had Tracy on, and she wouldn't get on because she was in her pajamas. So Paul McGregor is coming on.
All right, Paul.
Let's see if he's going to come in. If he's got all his stuff his microphone and his camera and everything else aligned.
I can't see
waiting
myself,
on Paul.
I'm here.
Can you hear us, Paul?
I can hear you, yes. Yes. Where are you?
Speak to us. Oop, he's got a firewall problem.
Oh, really?
Does anybody else want to join us? We still have an open seat.
So I'm going to kick.
All right.
We'll kick him out. Anybody else want to try and join us? Or you can just simply put a question in the question box, put it in the message. And by the way, what you can do is put /Q and then the question. Okay. Well, as I said, we're going to do a post on social media. It's based off an article based on Ryan. I remember the CEO of Hootsuite did about the fact that social media and social media tools are moving into the corporate environment, and then we will do a survey as we're doing monthly. Is on your own social media use. Primarily, we're only going to ask, I think, 2 questions. Are you male and female, and what social media tools do you use? And so Paul commented, most of my indirect contacts, weak ties are probably retired, so I'll be hanging out with people who aren't working. Okay, people who are retired, you don't think they're valuable. By the way, they are. They know people who are still working. They have
sons and daughters.
They have sons and daughters who are still working. So you think they're not useful. The answer is incorrect. This is similar to what I've told young people who say, well, geez, I talked to someone like Mark, and he's so much older than me. What do we have in common? Well, he's got a lot of, they have a lot of common is my kid. So we have something we can relate on. And so, yeah, Paul says I'm in the same position as Paul, but you'll be surprised how many of those people do. Let's see. Texas Maverick says, I notice when I network, I'm meeting others who are job searching. How can we help each other if we've just met and don't actually know anything about each other's professional life? Good question. Okay. Whenever I meet somebody, so here in Austin, it's easy. The first question I always ask is, how'd you get to Austin? And I'm going to start asking them questions until I find that we have something in common. By the way, you can do this with both people who are employed and not employed. And the key piece is I'm looking for something that we can connect on a personal level. Once I connect with you, I get to know who you are. Then we can start the discussion how we can help one another. But the first thing is I want to know who you are. Why should I care about you? Now, I'll use the example Elizabeth. Elizabeth is fairly introverted, and we've been working together for a while, and she has learned to approach people. And again, it's one of those things of coming up with your own style.
Yes.
The key piece. Go ahead.
I have 3 standard questions that I use, and one of them I did steal from Mark is what brought you here to Austin. That's one. But also, if I'm at a conference or an event or there's a speaker, I ask, what do you want to learn today? What do you hope to take away from this event? And another good one to ask is somebody is, especially if they're a manager or vice president or they have some type of responsibility, is what keeps you up at night at your company? What is it? Are your pain points? What is it? Are you concerned about? And usually when you ask those 3 questions, you get an incredible amount of information, and which you can, collect and sort through and figure out what you can do with it next.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking here for a blog post. One of the things I claim is you want to start learning how to be you want to start learning how to be a detective and ask questions. I have a negotiator job search series that I'm going to post in the that you might want to go look at. It's about, one of those in there is about asking open-ended questions. So hopefully, Texas Maverick, I've answered your question. I'm going to let Stan in here. Stan's been a regular with us every week. It's always interesting to see how long it takes for someone to come in. It's not instantaneous. So Texas Maverick, did I answer your question? Just go ahead and type it in. Stan, where are you? You were on before.
Yes, he was.
Oh, he didn't make it. Okay. Anyway, so anybody else have any questions? Here's Stan. Stan's going to try and come in again.
Okay.
Stan's a technical guy. He should be able to figure this out.
There we go.
Look.
Yay, there he is.
So what did you do differently?
I had to refresh and I reloaded the web page. I clicked on the sharing button twice, nothing happened. So I just reloaded the web page.
Okay.
On it again, and it worked. And I wanted to say something about weak ties. Oh, by the way, I went to Lexington last week, not in Indianapolis, and met with the guys from Jump. And I connected with all three of them. And I'm wondering now what to do next. I had a conversation with two of them, and one especially, I asked them for some ideas. I said, hey, this experimental design part is really hard to sell because most people don't know about it. And,
right.
You know, if I were Deloitte Touche or somebody coming in, there would be a different story. They'd have a dozen people in the conference room. So he said he's going to think about it. So how can I don't want to use the word exploit, but how should I follow up on that? I'm connected with all three.
Okay, the magic word I want you to use is advice.
Okay.
You're out looking for advice now. You want to be persistent without being pushy. But by the way, when you ask for advice, it's a compliment, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when have you asked for advice and people go, I don't want to talk to you. Right? I said, my joke is when you ask for advice, if they turn you down, they're a jerk, and you don't want to talk to them anyway.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, I would premise is to get their ideas, their advice. I would start, and again, I posted in there the Negotiator Job Series. I've got a couple of good posts on asking questions.
Okay.
There's a post. What this comes, the series came out of a book called God, my mind's gone blank. Hold on a second. From Jim Camp, starting with no negotiating tools that pros.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's a really good book. And by the way, I found 99% of it applies to job search.
Huh.
And it's about just like what Elizabeth said, asking questions like probing questions about, geez, what keeps you up at night? Because a negotiator, what they want is they want to get the dirt. They want to find out what the underlying. Similar is, in your case, you want to know what problems they have.
Okay.
Right? Because
Right.
what do? You solve problems. So if you understand what their problem is, then you can properly position yourself.
Okay.
So think about being a doctor. When a doctor comes in, does this hurt? Does this hurt? Right? Starts probing for pain points. So, you want to do the same thing. Is you want to probe for pain points. What hurts? Because then you can properly position yourself. And by the way, if it's a pain that you can't solve, you're in the wrong place.
True.
Right?
Or you might know somebody that could solve that for that person.
But if you but at the same time you say, yeah, but you need to go talk to so and so. That will buy you. It's very similar. There's a guy who was commenting on my Facebook, and I posted an article on my Facebook that someone wrote about how to deal with bad recruiters, and he just said, "Oh, they're all bad." And I said, "Well, if the only time you talk to a recruiter is when you want something, you're too late. Right." So similarly, in this case, if you suddenly discover a pain point and you can't solve it, but you know someone who can, is you make that referral. And by the way, will they remember you? The answer is heck yes.
Yes.
And so it's not always about, and by the way, yes, I know a lot of you are searching for jobs and you're unemployed. The key piece is you should always be doing this even when you're employed. Or in Stan's case, you're always going to be looking for that next gig.
Yep.
Right? And so always looking at saying, how can I be helpful? Even if it doesn't. So as you're asking these probing questions, and again, this is where, again, going back to the introverted sales guy, this is where being an introvert actually is very helpful. Is learning how to just simply ask questions, listen, and just keep on probing in. So one of the classic ones I always tell people is, ask, how did you get to Austin? And one of the next, about 20% of the time is I followed a guy or a gal here. So the next question is, are you still with them? And the answer is usually no.
No.
But it's again, is having that, what you'll find is you'll find these series of questions that you can kind of weave in, and you're going to see when you start talking to people with your own set of questions that you'll see a pattern, and that you'll be able to use your advantage.
Okay.
Right. And so I'll use an example. I had a client up in the Northeast, and she was interviewing with this VP of marketing, and so she asked her exactly the same things. What keeps you up at night? And the lady just gave her all the problems. She then explained how she could help. Then she went back to the hiring manager, sent an email back to the hiring manager saying, here's what the problems that your boss told me about, and here's how I can solve all of them. Do you think they hired her?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, they ended up waiting 2 months for her.
Oh.
Because we had issues with her leaving her old company before she turned the right age, so for pension wise.
Okay.
So, but they waited because she had she asked the right question at the right time and got all the dirt that she needed.
Okay.
That is where being an introvert is an advantage. And that's one of the hard parts for people who are very extroverted, is learning how to shut up and listen. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else want to hop in?
Or have any questions?
Yeah, or have any questions? We've got a whole audience on here. We've got about a dozen people on tonight.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, I can X out here if somebody else wants in.
We've got an open seat.
Okay.
So we're about 40 minutes in. I'm going to stop the recording. And if anybody else wants to hop in, well, that's 40 minutes is good enough. So thank you. Again, this is Career Pivot, and we'll hang on here for another 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to pause it.